Hello and welcome to Real Chats with Real Student Athletes. I am here with Bryson Richards, and he is a former football player at Stetson University. And just to give you a little bit of an insight on Bryson and his career at Stetson, he was committed to Stetson and showed up on campus in 2017. He says that he wasn't the biggest, fastest, and strongest by any means. I find that hard to believe, but he knew that he could not be outworked. Fall camp was rough, but that was just football. That's football camp. He broke the starting lineup on special teams during camp and made that plane ride to their first game, where he unfortunately ended up breaking his wrist and having surgery, which put him out for the entire season and off season. This was just the beginning of a long ride he just wasn't so sure about. For the next 4 years, he battled 4 more surgeries, but he never quit. Playing time was limited due to the fact that he really didn't get a full participation in spring ball because of the injuries. But he kept coming back, and he really just couldn't break the stigma of the injuries. He focused on being an infectious leader to his teammates and coaches, and he never turned his back on the program. There was a bigger reason for him to be a part of this program, and that's what we really are going to get into with Bryson today. So I'm so excited to speak with you, Bryson, and really just get into mental performance training, leadership, culture. And I'm also excited because you're my first football player. So I just think that it's going to be a really great chat.
Yes, I'm excited.
Good. So just based on our brief conversation, because we just saw each other not too long ago in Florida when we were visiting family, I feel like our conversation was just light years ahead of student athletes, and just your mindset and role as a leader on a team was just very mature. You spoke so passionately about having a growth mindset, the importance of leadership within a team, both for coaching, and your coaches and your players. Can you tell me a little bit more about developing yourself as a person first and a player second?
Yeah. To start off, I didn't come in at 18 years old with that mindset. It was grown over the 5 years that I played there, as well as the experiences, that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I came in as a 18-year-old kid. That was best in the state in my district. I was first team all state, first team all district. So my head was a little bigger than probably it should have been. So I showed up on campus with, I'm the best player here, right? Most likely anybody does. And I was quickly reminded that I wasn't, but it was always one of those things that when I got there, I wasn't there for myself, and over the years, I have seen players that come to, especially with the transfer portal and NIL and stuff that's come out now, which, there's pros and cons to it, just like anything. But I see a lot of people that show up on campus, and they're here to get theirs, and
Mm-hmm.
get experience and then move, you know what I mean? And, you talked about it earlier, but I got there, I worked hard, I broke the starting lineup, and I ended up having the first injury. And that because I've been playing football since I was 5. So at that point, it was 14 years that I've been playing football for and I never missed a game. So even in high school, I mean, sprained ankle, stuff like that, but still never missed a game. And to come in at 18 years old, away from family, and on a team where you break your wrist and you're done for the rest of the season, you have to get surgery, is tough, And at that point, I didn't know who I was then. I idolized football because football was everything for me. When people saw me, they saw me as a football player, not Bryson Richards as the person that he is. So that was really, then I hated it because I was like, it's my sport, it's where I get my aggression out, whatever the case may be. But I didn't know who I was, and that's what I actually hated, So that's where kind of it started trickling to me to figure out who I was and how can Bryson Richards be a football player, not how can football be Bryson. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was tough. I really there's obviously more injuries that came after that, but what really got me through it, I guess, is I sat down and I said, there's a reason why I'm here. And I could have quit. I could have hung them up then. I've seen many of people do that, and I just knew that wasn't an option. I was raised that way, that you can't quit. Adversity. The funny thing is, at 18 years old, you think when something like that happens, the world's over, but now looking back, I'm like, I've grown so much from that. And I'm so happy that it's weird. Not a lot of people agree with me, but I'm happy that I had 5 surgeries in 5 years, because each one was a building block to become who I am today, and I see a little different than most people might, because I know it's not a Power 5 school. I wasn't on scholarship. So really it was an internal choice to come back, and battle. So that's just a overall, I guess, quick synopsis of kind of the building blocks, I guess. But from the growth aspect, I'm happy that it happened. And I really I'm glad that it did, at least the first one, because I had good mentors and friends around me, which really helped. My parents, obviously, and my coaches. That there were some coaches that were like my defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach at Stetson. He recruited me, and when it happened, he was like, "You're not leaving. So go to rehab, do what you need to do. You're not leaving. We're not even going to discuss it anymore." So I'm glad that I had that accountability, and good mentors and leaders ahead of me, upperclassmen, that were helping. And that's kind of the one thing that I tried to do, is be able to do that, to the younger kids that got injured and stuff like that over my career. So
Yeah. No, and I go back to, because when I do these real chats, I do ask for the athlete to just give me a little bit of, an intro to who you are so I can set the scene. And I love how you started it. And it was, I committed to Stetson.
yeah,
So like your commitment was greater than your feelings at
yeah,
any point, I think.
yeah,
And that's what I gravitate towards you, because I feel like there is more than a football player, and the things that you've seen yourself grow over the years have really developed you into a, I want to say, a leader.
hmm
And so tell me a little bit. I know when we were in Florida, we were talking about just the program, right? Stetson's program.
yeah,
And I think that you're doing an amazing job of trying to keep that culture up as
yeah.
far as giving back to your program. So can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about that? About, where you see
Yeah.
yourself now that you graduated and you're an alumni?
Okay. Yeah. So I got there in 2017. This year, actually, 2022, is 10 years since they've brought football back. So they had a football program. They did away with it for a while, and then they brought it back 10 years ago today. So I came in right about that 4-5 year range. And it's a non-scholarship league. So we're in the Pioneer Football League. And so we're with like Davidson. They call it the Ivy Leagues, or not the Ivy Leagues, but the smart schools. So like Davidson, Dayton, San Diego, stuff like that. But, to touch on what you said earlier, commitment, I think, is a big proponent, and I really gravitated towards that word, is all throughout my career and even now, you know what I mean? Because when I said I was committed to Stetson, it wasn't committed to Stetson if everything goes good. It wasn't committed to
Mm,
Stetson if I get playing time. It wasn't committed to Stetson if my coaches like me. You know what I mean? It was, I'm committed to Stetson because there's a reason why I felt like I wanted to go there. You know what I mean? And it was a bigger reason than myself, the friends, the coaches. And yes, no matter what sport it is, recruiting is 100% different than when you show up on campus. But still, I felt like I could be a part of something that was bigger than myself. So I went in, I'm glad that I went in without the selfish mindset, and, I follow a lot of inspirational speakers like Inky Johnson, who played college football, had a really bad injury. But he always said, and I remember it freshman year still when I broke my wrist, because I was pretty down bad then. and his quote is, "Leave this place better than you found it." So that was kind of what drove me, is that no matter what happens, I'm going to leave this place better than I found it, And so as a leader, we started a leadership council with a bunch of guys that could volunteer. We went through books, leadership books like Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, and all those different books, where we started to revamp this culture that started to come up, but really 2017 is really when it took off. And then with issues in the world, I was a leader of the diversity meeting as well. Diversity council is what we called it, where we talked about key issues in the world. And because football is one of those, you come from all different areas, all different demographics, backgrounds. So we wanted to get down to knowing each other and being able to help each other out when we wanted to. And I think the biggest thing that made us successful, because there was times where we were really good and there was times where we were really bad. And the one word that fell when we weren't good, that fell through the cracks, was love. And you don't hear a lot of men my age talk about love, because there's a stigma that love is, when a man talks about love, it's weak, right? Or whatever the case may be. But there was a point in time in 2018, my first year, we went 2-8. 2018, we went 8-2. 2017 or 2019, we went 7-4, right? So those leaders, the upperclassmen ahead of me now that I still talk to weekly, we sat down and was like, it's about love, and accountability, like they called me to make sure that I was in class, and even like I was a linebacker then. So Jamison Crask was one of my biggest mentors. He took me under his wing, and I was the same position as him. So even that, it's so hard to have somebody that you're battling positions out, in the practice field, but he still turns around and is like, hey, make sure you get to class, make sure you're doing the little things right, show up on time, all those non-coachables that separate you, you know what I mean? And so now I feel, because of how much I gave, while I was there, that it doesn't just end when I graduate. We're working on setting up actually a Stetson Football Association right now, which is alumni driven, where there's a fee to pay to be in it. And it's going to be an actual funded program. And the purpose of it is that once it gets big enough, we can go back, a group of alumni go back and talk to recruits' parents, and you do barbecues for the current players that are still there, so that when you leave, you feel like you're still part of a family. You know what I mean? So we're in the processes of doing that now, which I think will be really, really cool. We've never had anything like that, so it's funded through the school, and we'll be able to go back and see games, and not just on homecoming, be able to go take the team out to a bowling alley or whatever. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, I feel like I have so much to unpack, and I wish I was like writing things down as you were speaking, because I want to press
we
like
can
rewind.
always talk more. Yeah, I'm not.
I know. But the one thing, so when it comes, I love when you talk about culture, and it's more than just football, because it's not an I sport, it's not a me sport, it's a we sport. And I think the more players understand that it's not a me and it's a we, and the more each player takes on that mentality. Like if it's one player and it's you, that's great, right? But if it's a team of you, then if it's the whole team, then it's like you're truly unstoppable. So I love that you guys are forming this alumni association to give back, because it doesn't stop there. And I love that you use the word commitment. And I want to go back to that mantra, because in mental performance coaching, that's the one key area that I do focus on coaching with athletes, is like, have something to go to when you need something to go to.
Yes.
And you're something to go to when you broke your wrist. And if you can repeat it again, like that was your mantra, to say, hey, let me check in with myself. Let me remind myself why I'm here, what I'm doing, what's my purpose, and not get so, down and out about the moment. So what was the mantra again?
So from Inky Johnson, the quote is, leave this place better than you found it. And I think you always hear, I mean, I know you probably hear it in, coaching, but you always hear the cliche, what's your why, right? And I've seen people where we had to put on leadership meetings and someone says, what's your why? And everyone rolls their head or drops their head, because that it's just a common, what's your why? But if you really dig down to and think about it, if you ask somebody point blank without giving them a choice, what's your why? Why are you here? There's a good amount of people that are like, I don't know, and that's okay. But let's dig into it deeper to figure out, what is your driving force? Is it your family? Is it your spouse? Is it your, you yourself? What is the reason why you're here? You know what I mean? And that's why you're going to sacrifice, especially coming from football you're on a roster of 105 people. And it's not like the Power 5 schools where they have just same amount of coaches. We had 13 coaches. So do the ratio, you know what I mean? It's tough to be able to watch after all of these kids and be a coach, you know what I mean? So in that, you have to build that culture that we were talking about earlier. You have to have somebody to go to, I know. And even as a, man, it was tough for me to go to my family and say, listen, I'm struggling, you know what I mean? Because I didn't want them to know that I was struggling, an early immature male football player. I didn't want to tell anybody I was struggling, because I don't want to burden them, one, but two, I didn't want to seem weak. So, but then it came to the point where, it's almost easier to let go of something than it is to just hold on to it. It does more damage if you just hold on to it. You know what I mean? So luckily I was able, with the culture and friends and some coaches that I had, I could go and sit down and have those hard conversations where I'm just like, listen, I'm struggling, and, it actually, which her obviously, but when I met my fiance, Kara, we met in the training room and she was dealing with a shoulder surgery. So that was really comforting, helpful to be able to talk to not just a male, but also a female that was going through similar situations, and how she was dealing with it. And we were able to help each other in processing the emotions of it all, and so that was really, really helpful in the early stages of, I had 3 more surgeries after that, and she had 2 more after that. So it was one of those things that being able to talk to people, is it's hard to do it. Don't get me wrong. And it's really hard to talk to coaches about it, but if you can find a group of people that you can trust and just talk about these things and know that it's okay to not be okay, and you hear that a lot, but I think it's a big proponent. And there's a lot of things that change from high school to college. It's hard to prepare for it because it's what ifs, you don't know what's going to come. Recruiting's so different than reality, but going there with just the mindset of why you're doing what you're doing, committing to it 110% and say, no matter what happens, I'm here to leave this place better than I found it. You do those 3 things, your experience, no matter what happens, is going to be good, because you're going to make the best out of it. You know what I mean? It is what you make it. It can be as worse as you want it to be, or it can be as good as you want it to be. It's really, and that's where it's, it's not a me thing, but it's your biggest enemy is the person that you're looking at in the mirror. It's either you're going to make it or break it for yourself. You know what I mean? And no matter what external factors, if you can control what you can control, then you're going to make it or break it for yourself. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think really the biggest part is getting into a group of people, which isn't easy for everybody. And I get that, but getting into a group of people, or at least knowing going into it kind of what it looks like. And I think that's why it's so important for us to do this association, that talking to these parents that are sending their kids away, and say, listen, this is how it is. And these coaches are going to recruit you because they want you to play for them. But let me tell you how it actually is, because it's the right thing for me to do, to give you my experience, so that you at least know what it can and cannot be like. So that's why we like that idea of it. But
yeah, no. And, one thing that kind of stood out to me when you were just talking about your why, and when you say like coaches would ask like, well, what's your why? And everybody would hang their head, like that to me is like, well, we need to help you uncover your why, because like you said, it's going to be the thing that's going to keep you motivated. It's going to be your go-to, because like you said, not everything is rainbows and unicorns and happy times, like, but the real time that you perform is through those difficult moments. Like your performance shines through the adversity. It builds your character. You get to understand who you are as a person. And all those building blocks really do obviously help you after college, and really pave the path of what decisions are you going to be making moving forward. So that's one thing, when I'm working with athletes, is kind of, okay, well, what is your why? And if, like you said, if they can't snap of a finger and tell me, we have some work to do.
yeah, exactly.
And that's okay. And that's okay. And that's okay. And understanding your why, having a mantra, and then having a group of people to go to. Like, I think, like you said, those three things, if you can do those three things, that'll give you a definite foot up, especially coming from the high school to the college, to the college program.
And I'll be honest really quick too, that I know a lot of friends. I know friends that play at Florida. I know friends that played at Florida State, Kentucky, Power 5 schools, D2 schools, D3, JUCO, doesn't matter. I will say I am blessed that I ended up going to Stetson, because I've talked to them about their team dynamic, and culture isn't pushed as hard as it is pushed at Stetson. They do a really good job ever since 2017 when we started this to carry on culture. Brian Young is the head coach now. He was my defensive coordinator when I got there. He recruited me, and they do it where it's not just X's and O's, but their mantra is a Stetson, being a Stetson man. And there's all these different, qualities: blue collar, accountability, leadership, all these qualities that make a Stetson man. But he is really the driving force that even, and your why can change, but he's really the one that pushed the mantra of the growth mindset that we talked about, because he was one of the coaches that I could really go to, and which is helpful. And I know a lot of people won't have that experience, but there's people like me that can help them out. You know what I mean? And people like you that hear that and can help them out still. So he was a big proponent, and I'm not just worried about what you do on the football field. I want to grow you to be a good husband, a good father, a good man that gives back to the world and works hard and earns whatever whatever you want to achieve, and no matter what, never quit. So it was beyond football in some aspects, but then again, not everyone's like that. You know what I mean? I'll just be on, there's some coaches that are only X's and O's, so as a player, when you're dealing with stuff back home, or you're homesick, or whatever the case may be, who do I turn to? You know what I mean? Because you get homesick, or a family member falls ill, it doesn't just affect you outside of football or sport. It affects your playing. It does, because it's on your mind. And that's where, like you're saying, the mantra of what's your why, what's the mantra, and who can I go to? Those three, that can help the mental side of whatever you're dealing with. It's just breaking that barrier into who can I trust to actually sit down and have this conversation. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. And I mean, the culture, your alumni association, I think that is, that is so important moving forward. And I do see a lot more teams and universities and colleges and programs, starting to establish more of, like you said, like these leadership councils.
For sure.
Yeah, my husband has one. He's, the Division I baseball coach at Rider. And, he has a leadership team where, it's a group of students that are there to kind of have conversations with him. Hey,
Yeah.
what's going on outside of baseball? What do I need to know? What can we do better at? And I think the culture of the thing is, you can have a poster on the wall and say that's
Yeah.
your culture. But if
Mhm.
you're not backing it up with the behaviors at the end of the day, it's not a culture.
Yeah. Especially
Plain
when
and
people
simple.
don't even know what's on the poster. You walk through a
Exactly.
locker room and say, hey, what does it say? And half the people don't even know because they
Right.
don't look at it, But it's
Right.
good coaches like your husband that do that stuff. And I know, just talking to him when he was in Florida, he's one of those people that he doesn't want you just to tell, for players to tell him what he wants to hear. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a sense, he humbles himself to say, what can I do better? What can how can I help you? Help me help you type of thing, There's a lot of coaches that don't check their ego at the door to be able to do that. But you see it in their camaraderie as a team and their success as a team too, because at the end of the day, these players talk a lot, they're going to know it's going to get through no matter, what you say or how you say it.
Yeah.
There's still things that can help and hurt a team and really help a team, I should say, by sitting down and saying, hey, let's debrief this and talk about how we can get better as a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not just me telling you what you did wrong, but also letting you talk and allowing you to tell me how you feel and what you think would be better. So I like that.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of the times when you're going into a sport, and like you said, you've been playing since you were 5.
Yeah.
So how many camps have you gone to? How many, I don't know if you had special coaches help you out with any type of like special drills that you do. How many summer camps, how many teams did you play on? And it was all about the physicality.
Yeah.
Like, how can you get better and stronger physically?
Yes.
But at no point was there saying like, hey, let's break this down to a mental component and say like, what are maybe 5 key areas that you need to focus on mentally? So when you step out on the field, you can perform your best, knowing that you have control over your mind, and then that can kind of catapult you into the physicality of it.
Yeah.
I do see it's happening a lot more, and that's why I'm so passionate about this and want to speak to athletes. So I can just share that you're not alone. Like student athletes, if you look around and you ask questions, you're gonna get a lot of the same struggles.
Yes.
And that you're not alone. So I think this was wonderful, and I hope to talk to you again at some point. Because I think that what you're doing as an alumni and giving back and continuing to live through your mantra, I think is really critical. So having that why, your mantra, and then having that group of people that you can go to that support you, love you, and will listen to you. Because it's not really about them really saying anything to you that's going to change your mind.
Yeah.
It's about just getting it off your chest and getting it out there.
Yeah.
So kind of like the last thing, just, what if there was one thing that you would, tell fellow student athletes, coming into college, or, getting accepted and committing to a program, what's one thing that you would love to leave with student athletes today before we jump off?
That's a big question. I would say the biggest thing is, make that commitment, but really leave a legacy, whatever that looks like. It doesn't matter how many home runs you have, doesn't matter how many goals you have, I'm not talking about box score legacies, I'm talking about, back to my mantra, leave the place better than you found it. You know what I mean? Go in there, compete, you're there to play, whatever sport you're playing, but also to get an education as well. But at the same time, all it takes is one person. It really does. And it creates a ripple effect. If there's not a culture, if there's not a culture, figure out a way to build one, dive into that and create it, because at the end of the day, my biggest accomplishment in the 5 years that I've been there is it was never the plays that I've made on Saturday. It never was. I mean, people won't even remember that. They don't remember it now. I couldn't even tell you. But the biggest accomplishment that I made there was that people came up to me in the midst of adversity for them and were able to sit down and feel comfortable enough to say, hey, I know you've been through 5 surgeries, a wrist, a shoulder, a knee, and an ankle. And how did you get through this? You know what I mean? What did you do to continue? How do you continue to come back every year and not quit and still be able to give 110% effort, knowing that you might break something again? You know what I mean? And I tell them again, I'm not here for myself. I'm here for something bigger than myself. I'm here for you guys. I love my teammates more than I love myself. You know what I mean? So I'm going to sacrifice and put it on the line for them because, yeah, it might cost me a surgery here or there, but at the end of the day, that's what I committed to, and I'm going to uphold my end of the deal in whatever way it might be, and it doesn't just have to be on the football field or any sports field, but I would say the biggest thing is leave your legacy no matter what it is. If you're a really good leader, be a great leader. If you're a really good teammate, be a good teammate, and there's so many different ways to do that. Get out in the community, whatever the case may be, get your teachers, get the school board to come to your games. If you're close to your high school, get your high school to come to the game, because when you do that, you're not affecting just the parents and the teachers. There's little kids that are looking up to you going, I want to be like that. You know what I mean? So I would say that that's the biggest accomplishment out of the 5 years of me being there for sure, is people were comfortable enough to come up to me and ask for advice, and I didn't have anybody really when it first happened to me. I was kind of stuck. There was a couple people that I could talk to, but I saw as the years went by and I took that leap of faith to start working on this stuff, injury related. It's a little different than normal, but injury related, where I'd go hang out in the training room when I was after my ACL surgery, we had 4 weeks left in the season, and I hang out in the training room. People were banged up, whatever, hamstrings, tired, or 8 weeks into a season, they came in, they're like, and I could just see it on them. And I just sit in the training room all day and be like, hey, keep your head up. It's going to get better. You're fine. Let's do your rehabs, and I'd see their rehabs, and I've done every rehab there is. And I'm like, do it this way, do it this way. Just trying to help, because it's hard to hear from a coach. It's hard to hear it from a trainer over and over, but somebody that's actually walked that walk is more infectious to somebody that's going through it currently, and I'd always just ask them, how you living? You know what I mean? Not just, I don't care about football. How you living? Your parents good? I was back home. You talked to them lately. People especially with injuries too. I'm like, when's your surgery? I text them before surgery, hey, you're on the road to recovery now. Let's get back. And they were really appreciative of that, because I talked a lot of people off the cliff of quitting simply because I'm like, listen, this is just something small that you can overcome. And when you do, you're going to feel like you've accomplished something bigger than yourself. And that they come back and thank me for it is something that's really hard to put words to, but it's a cool thing to see, because I'm not just worried about myself, but I'm also infecting other people and allowing them to have a good experience with what they're doing. So,
yeah, no. And I think, we'll end it there, because I think what you said was just what we needed to hear, that, as a freshman coming into a new program, you're leaving old coaches, old teammates, and old way of doing things. You're coming into a new program, new coaches, new teammates, new routines, new playbook, everything. You don't know. So as a freshman coming in, find an upperclassman, find a leader on the team, ask them, hey, what do I need to know? Give me 3 things that I need to know to be successful in this program. And tell me straight. Like, don't lie to me. Just tell me straight. And I think if they are willing to accept, right? And be humble and
Yeah.
willing to accept that advice and really take it and run with it, there's no way that they won't succeed
And
in that
upperclassmen
program.
will appreciate that. They really will. I know I would, because that doesn't happen often. You know, if you have a freshman that comes in and doesn't say, how many sacks you think I'm going to get or whatever, but they come in and say, listen, give me 3 things to get better at. Give me 3 things that will help me succeed in this program. I would take a step back and I'm like, this kid's attitude's on point. You know, I'm going to help this kid and I'm going to take him under my wing and make sure that he has a successful career here. You know what I mean? Because that doesn't happen often. So that's something I really like, you know, what you said there and that, because, you know, just having, it's scary. It is. Upperclassmen are mean. They're not nice people, but there's one. You may not get the first one, but there is going to be one that's like, you know what? I like this kid. I'm gonna help him. You know what I mean? So
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because I was reading a book or listening to a podcast, and you know, that one person that you ask, like, hey, give me advice, and if they say, no, dude, like, what, do your own, it doesn't mean that's the end of the road. Ask the next person. That might just not be your person. So like, don't think that just because that person doesn't want to help you, that the next person won't be a Bryson Richards. You know, so
wheel, you know, you and you hear that and you're like, yeah, but I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to ask the wrong people. And it's like, if you're asking the right questions, then be the squeaky wheel. Don't come around saying, oh, I'm going to make all these plays and break records. But if you come around and say, hey, tell me 3 things that I can get better at, something that helps the team, somebody eventually you're going to break through to somebody and somebody will help you. So,
yeah. No, I love that. Yay! I'm so thankful for you, Bryson. This was an excellent conversation. I so appreciate all the insight and all the value that you brought to this conversation today. I can't wait for other student athletes to hear it, just about injury, culture, leadership, growth mindset. I think we hit on a lot of different key areas today, and I'm so thankful for it. So again, thanks for hanging out with me. We'll probably talk again soon because there's a lot more to uncover, but
if anybody ever wants to talk more in depth or whatever, if you find an athlete that, you know, wants to talk more about it or whatever, I'm always free. So I'm open for conversation. I'm willing to help. So I really appreciate what you're doing as well. It means a lot. It's true to me as a alumni, but also as a player. This stuff doesn't happen much. So I really respect what you're trying to do. And I know you're going to do great things doing it. So I appreciate you taking the time to interview me, my fiance, and people that have been through this. But it's definitely something that can change people's lives. So it's not something little, but it's actually meaningful. So I appreciate you know what you're doing, and I think it's going to be a great thing. So
thanks, Bryson. I truly appreciate that. Yep. We're just here to, like you said, it takes one person, and it takes just having an open ear, an open mind, and you can change some lives. So that's all I can really ask for. Just even if I'm just changing one life, that's enough for me. So
that's awesome.
Thank you so much, Bryson.
Have a good one.
Thanks.